Hello everyone and welcome to Exam B. So in this video we are going to talk about virtual functions, and this particular topic will help you in your IBPS RRB IT officer examination. So previously we talked about the polymorphism, okay, the runtime polymorphism and the late binding and the compile time binding, the static binding. We talked about these concepts in our previous video in a manner to make you aware how these things work in C++. Virtual functions come into role. Okay, so this particular topic, virtual function, is basically derived from the concept which is applicable in C++ only. Okay, so here what will happen when C++ is going to make polymorphism, that is runtime polymorphism, happen, it uses something called as virtual function. So we'll be just addressing this particular thing in our video. Okay, so let's start. So now what is virtual function? सबसे पहले हमें समझना है virtual function क्या है. So member function is declared within the base class. Okay, we know that functions are defined within the classes. Okay, and once the function has been defined within that particular class, and if that particular class is getting inherited by other class, that previous class will be called as base class, and the one who is inheriting it will be called as the subchild, or the uh, other class which is going to be the child of that. Okay, so there will be a parent and child relationship between the base class and the derived class. So a member function which is defined and declared within the base class, and it is redefined, that is overridden by the derived class. Suppose we have two classes A and B, and B is inheriting A has a function called as show, and similarly B is also having the same function named as show with the same parameters and other thing in the point. So we will be saying that the function which is defined in A is being overridden by the class B. Okay, now when you refer to a derived class object using a pointer or a reference to the base class, you can call a virtual function for that object and execute the derived versions of that particular function. Okay, so when you are going to play around with the objects, you will create base class object, you will create derived class object. Once you are creating a derived class object using a base class pointer, what you will be having a privilege that you can call a virtual function, means the function which is there in the derived class with the same name that is there in the base class. So this is the thing, and make a note that this particular thing which is the overriding and using of the virtual function, this happens only when we use a pointer or a reference. It will not happen if we are using anything else. It will just happen when we are having pointers in place. Now there are some rules by which we are going to have the virtual function. So what are they? So number one is like virtual functions cannot be static. You cannot make virtual functions static. So why the function cannot be static? There are functions which are declared as static, like our main function. Our main function is always static, and why it is so? So you guys have to tell me in the comment section why a function that is our main function is static always, and what are the causes and what are the effects once we declare a particular function as being static. Okay, so virtual function cannot be static. This is the first rule. Then the second rule is a virtual function can be a friend function of another class. Okay, so there is a relationship with the inheritance, that is the friend thing. Okay, so if you don't know, just don't panic, just remember that a virtual function can be a friend function of another class. Okay, after that thing, the third point is the virtual function should be accessed using a pointer or a reference of base class type to achieve runtime polymorphism. This I have explained you that you have to use only pointers or the references in order to make this virtual function thing happen. Now the fourth thing is the prototype of virtual function should be same in the base as well as the derived. This is also the need of the hour, because we have to override the function. If we anyhow change the prototype of the virtual function, then those two functions will be assumed as different by the compiler. Okay, because we have changed anyhow the declaration of that particular function. So we have to keep them identical. We can change the body, but we cannot change anything else like the definition and the declaration one. Then the fifth is having, they are always defined in the base class, definitely, and they are overridden in the derived class. Okay, and it is not mandatory for the derived class to override it. Okay, suppose I have defined a virtual function in my base class named virtual show. So it is not mandatory and not a responsibility of the derived class that it has to override it. If they don't want to override, they can just skip it, and they if they don't need to just override it, they can just skip it on. Okay, After that thing, a class may have a virtual destructor, but it cannot have a virtual constructor. So while we are going to create the objects, we can have virtual destructors because we need to just reallocate or free the memory, but we cannot have a virtual constructor because anyhow, according to the hierarchy, first the base class object will be created and then the child class object will be created. So there is no need to have a virtual constructor in place. After all that thing is going to happen, we have to understand how the flow is going to work. So as I told you, you should have a pointer or a reference in place in order to make this virtual thing happen. Okay, so first you will have a pointer. That pointer will point to a particular object. That particular object will be a derived class object and the pointer will go for base time. Now once you are going to call this particular thing with the function that is virtually defined in the base class, once you call that particular function, then the virtual table references are being made. Okay, we have separate virtual table, that is the v table for the base class and for the derived class, and depending upon our object we are going to either call the v table for the base class or the v table of the derived class. So even if you do not exercise anything, there are v tables which are present for the base class and the derived class. These variables are going to contain the address of the virtual functions, the functions who are going to preceded by the name that is virtual. So all those functions, even if you are using them or you are not using them, you are going to make a reference by their pointer or not. It is not a matter that is going to count. What will happen, you will have a virtual table for the base class and for the derived class at the same time, and these will contain the addresses of the virtual functions for their own classes. Okay, so every function in which these particular things are being defined, each can be base class or derived, they will have the address, so that whenever the object reference is made, they can just easily go out and look for the virtual table which reference is made, and they can just call that thing. So by this whole mechanism, the runtime polymorphism in C++ actually works. So I hope you are going to understand this thing in clear manner, and hope you understand this virtual function thing. This is a little bit complicated, but remember one to two things in the whole concept. The first thing is why virtual functions are needed, what is the role of the virtual function, how it can be done, there are some rules for defining them and accessing them, and then the virtual table concept. Okay, so if you know this thing, I think for our RRB IT officer, this is more than enough to have this knowledge in your bucket, and this is going to definitely help you back. Now we are having our course, that is IBPS RRB IT Officer, which will come with video lessons, study notes, practice tests, live session, and interview guidance. So you can enroll now and you can check our demo course as well. So in order to get a head start with your preparation, you can just opt with us, and we'll definitely going to help you out with this journey. So by the time you are going to watch this video, the application deadlines are being closed. So all the aspirants who have made their mind that they are going to put on their efforts with the IBPS or RRB IT officer, they should give their 100% to the exam. Okay, and we are here to help you with that 100%. So that was all from my side. We'll keep on bringing the IBPS or RRB IT officer content, moreover with the concepts and with the questions. By that time, keep practicing and stay updated.